Today, you're listening to a podcast about being on podcasts. That's hilarious. Let's talk about it. What's going on, people? It's me, RK3. I'm here again, my friend. Time for another show. Let's go. I'm jumping on the rap bandwagon again. Welcome back. I'm geeked about you being here today. It's the big 2-0, episode 20. Yes, we made it. Maybe that's not a big deal for some of the old school podcasters listening, but it's huge to reach 20. And we're almost legal. And I'm going to celebrate all the way to 100, people. Seriously, celebrate every milestone. One of the problems for many of us is that we don't celebrate enough. I'm serious. There's so much crazy in the world. Why not celebrate the little things as well as the big things? Now, I need you to listen. I said celebrate, not settle. Okay? If celebrating is going to cause you to think that you've arrived, then stop. You've got more to go. I want you to celebrate as a means of recognizing what you've accomplished and achieved while still accepting that there's more growth to come and then leaning into that growth. Make sure that you do that. Well, I don't like dwelling on the past, but in this case, I want to make an exception. I want to invite you to go back and check out episode 19 with Pam Perry. She spoke to us about branding and marketing, and I want you to give that episode and even the earlier episodes a listen. Download them, rewind them, take notes. There's some great stuff there, and I know it will bless you if you give it a chance. All right? Great stuff. Quick resource. If you have a business and you do email marketing, I want to suggest to you ConvertKit. I use ConvertKit for all of my email marketing, and it makes things super easy with automation, split testing, sequences, and a lot of great features to make your follow-up really easy. I've used quite a few other tools, but I'm pretty sold on ConvertKit, and I believe you will be too once you give it a shot. I'll place a link in the show notes for you, so check out ConvertKit and get your game up in your email marketing. Let's get it going. Today, my guest is Tom Schwab. He's an amazing entrepreneur who has made a business of getting people on podcasts. Yep. His company, Interview Valet, helps people gain more visibility, more viability by getting people recognized as experts on podcasts. And not many companies are doing this. So let's hear about how Tom is doing it. Tom's got a story. Let's tell it. Tom Schwab is the author of Podcast Guest Profits, Grow Your Business with a Targeted Interview Strategy. He's the founder of Interview Valet, and he's a Navy veteran. He is an amazing person. We're actually just talking in the green room, and he's telling us that he just came from a podcast conference at Harvard University. Who knew that Harvard was interested in podcasting? So let's hear about it. Tom, how are you doing today?
Robert, I am thrilled to be here. The only way it could be better is if you and I were sitting together in the same spot. But with the wonders of technology, we get to talk here and let the world listen in.
Listen, we've got to work that out, man. We can't just keep doing this online thing. We got to get together in person.
Well, I was going to say this fall will be Harvard's second conference on podcasting, so we should both meet at Harvard.
That would be awesome. That would be amazing. So tell me a little bit about it. I don't want to just drop this Harvard thing in there and then not ever mention it again. Tell me a little bit about the Harvard Podcast Conference that you were a part of.
You know, we were talking about it and how far podcasting has come. You know, the first podcast conference I went to was 5 years ago in Texas, Podcast Movement. And great conference, but at that time, you know, podcasting was like Wayne's World, a couple of guys in their mom's basement. And it has really grown so much that Harvard called it the golden age of podcasting. And
Wow.
they did it because they realized that there's academics that are taking sabbaticals and they're doing their podcast during that. There's scientists talking about different things. Really, all of the promises of radio in the golden age, we're seeing them now. And it's so amazing to think we're living in the golden age of podcasting and really being a part of it. And the thing is that everybody can be a part of it. It's not like radio or television where you need lots of equipment or even a license to do it.
Yeah. So I get online, I get on Apple Podcasts, I got the app, it comes preloaded on my phone. And so I've got to see it. And I go in and I see all these different podcasts and everybody's popping up a podcast. Why, as a speaker, as a business owner, why should I have a podcast?
Well, I think you should be heard. And that could mean having your own podcast or being a guest on a podcast or both. You know, I think I spent way too much money and way too much time on getting my MBA. And I think my grandfather could have told me what marketing was. Marketing is starting a conversation with somebody that could be an ideal customer, right? And there were days where, you know, that used to mean the yellow pages or billboards. Well, today, podcasting is the easiest way to start that conversation, either as a host or a guest. And I think if you really try not to think of the technology so much, but the strategy behind it. What are you trying to do? You're trying to get known by your ideal customers. And, you know, Robert, the thing I think has changed dramatically over the last decade is that we are now in a world of abundance, like the world has never seen. Mike Maples is the first person I heard talk about this, and he's a big venture capitalist out in Silicon Valley. And he's like, before, we always had scarcity. Now there's, you know, an abundance of choices, an abundance of calories, an abundance of customers, right? Right now, there's 1,000, probably 1 million ideal customers that could be benefited by whatever product or service we have. Our biggest problem is they don't know we exist.
Wow.
Right? So the question becomes, how do you start that conversation with them? How do you get known by them? How do you get know, like, and trust? And for me, writing a blog is a homework assignment. Talking with people on a podcast, that's fun.
Yeah. So you just mentioned something that's critical in this conversation, though. You said we have access. Anybody can throw up a podcast. I mean, our computers come with microphones built in, right? I've got a Mac that comes with GarageBand. You can download Audacity for free. You know, why should I? What is it that I can do with a podcast to get heard as opposed to getting Google AdWords or Facebook marketing?
I think today it's never been easier to sell something online, right? If you want to sell something, be a penny cheaper than the next person, right? But don't lie to yourself that you're building a business, because next day somebody else is going to be a penny cheaper than you, and there'll be no loyalty. So it's never been easier to sell something, to do a transaction, but it's never been harder to build a company. And I think that really comes from a relationship, people getting to know, like, and trust you. So if you do a Google ad and it pops up, I don't know who RK3 is, you know, and if you're just selling a widget that, you know, I need right now that I'll never deal with you again, that transaction, that might work. But if you're really trying to build a business, relationships, long-term value, then people have to know, like, and trust you. And, you know, while I might click on some banner ads every now and then, I don't know who's behind that. You know, HubSpot a few years ago did a study, and they found about the CEO page, there was a high correlation to looking at that and actually signing up. Wow. And I think what that is that people want to know who's behind the company. You know, I think of one, you know, there's a lot of scheduling apps out there, right? And I don't know, I use Acuity. And when people say, well, why do you use that? And it's like, because I know Gavin. You know, I've heard him on a podcast interview. I understand why he did it, why he built the team, who he is. Is it better than all the rest? I don't know, but, you know, that's what I relate to is that one. The other ones, I don't know who started them. So to me, it's like I've got a relationship in some way with this, you know, podcast scheduling or calendar scheduling app.
Yeah. So a podcast is a great way to face, just for people to see you and get to know your personality, who you are, and get in front of audiences.
Exactly.
Excellent. So one of the things that I looked at your site earlier, and one of the things that you talked about was getting leads from podcasts. What should a beginning podcaster be doing? What should they be taking note of? Because it's one thing just to kind of say, listen, I'm going to record the conversation. Or just, I've got an idea. I'm just going to spew it out, record it, and put it out into the universe. What should a beginning podcaster be doing to really kind of get their ducks in a row and get everything together so that they can begin targeting leads?
Robert, that's such a great question. And I love how you said, a story. We've all talked to people where they've got this story and it's like, where is this going? And what's the point of the story, right? That's the difference between a story that leaves you scratching your head and a story that you remember or that you take action on. And I think the same way is in a podcast. It's like you've got to do something to move people from just being a passive listener to, maybe an active visitor to your site and engaged lead. Because we're not really serving anybody if we just tell them a quick story and then they're like, and what's next? It's almost like chumming the water, right? You throw out chum, but you don't throw out a hook, and it's like, then you're frustrated because you don't get any leads. Well, all you did was tell a story. You didn't tell them the next step.
Communication, motivation, leadership, and more. You're listening to the RK3 Show.
Hey folks, while we have a little break, I just wanted to remind you that if you have any questions and you want to hear them answered on the show, shoot me a voicemail. Go to robertkennedy3.com/voicemail. That's robertkennedy3.com/voicemail. And I'll play the voicemail on the show and answer your question. How's that for getting on the radio? Now, let's get back to the show.
Podcasting and audio in general can be so powerful because as you're painting a picture, you can always go back to your website to tell them, hey, here's the 5 tips, but you won't remember those. So just come back here and you can download it. Or here's the story. And I did a video or training on that. Go back there. You can find that. Always helping them to go to the next level.
Right. So we're talking about one side of the podcast right now. So when you and I are here talking and I've got one side, you're the other side. I'm the host. You're the guest. And we've talked about the host side of things, starting the podcast and what to do. But there is the guest side of it as well. So tell me a little bit about the guest side. What should I be doing? Is there something specific, a certain place that I should look in order to be a great guest and have that be a tool that I can use in my business?
Yeah, and I don't think it's an either or, right? Yeah. So if you're a podcast host, you should be a podcast guest too. I started out as a podcast guest just because it was easier, right? Anybody that says doing a podcast is easy has either never done it or never done it well, right? It's like football. Everybody wants to play for that 2 hours on Sunday and make millions of dollars, but they don't see all the work that goes into it.
Right.
And so from that standpoint, sometimes being a podcast guest can be a great way to start. It's not as big of a commitment. If you take 2 months off as a podcast host, people will notice. If you take it off as a guest, they won't. But I think the biggest place to start is that serving mentality, right? So never go into it and saying, how can I use this audience? How can I use this host? But no, how can I serve them? Gary Vaynerchuk's got that book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. I probably missed a couple jabs in that, but I just look at it as, serve, 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 ask. Right. And you just keep serving your audience, serving the host, that people will come back and ask you, how can I work with you?
Wow. So now I'm a guest and I'm looking to build business or gain visibility somehow. What are some of the places that I need to be looking to become a guest on podcasts?
And this is a part where a lot of people mess up, right? Mm-hmm. The first thing they'll say is, what podcast do you want to be on? And they'll name like the top 3 podcasts in the world.
Right.
And it's like there are more fish in the ocean than there are in a barrel of fish. But why don't you start in a small barrel of fish where there's fish there? right? So start at the smaller podcasts, ones that are niched down, that have your kind of listeners in there. Nobody likes a cold pitch, nobody likes a cold call. So put yourself in the position of the podcast host. Listen to the podcast, leave a rating and review. We're all vain. We're all vain. We listen for our own name. If you leave a rating and review, the podcast host will read it, will know it, right? If you share their stuff on social media, we'll see that, especially if you tag them in it. And then you've earned, you've that give. Then reach out and say, hey, I've listened to your podcast. I really appreciate this. I've got some information that I think could be of benefit to you and your audience. And that's when you start it there. So you don't need to robo pitch 100 podcasts. Just find 5 that you could add value to, and start there.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people, when you say something like that, they're like, well, geez, that sounds like it takes a lot of time to follow a podcast and follow a host and then share their stuff and then send them a message. Golly, I've got a lot of other stuff to do. Is there a shortcut?
It's funny. I was just talking to somebody that said it was like dating, right? Could you robo pitch every young lady out there on Facebook? Wow. Yeah, but the ones that are going to respond probably aren't the ones that you would want to date in the first place. If you're really trying to add value and build a relationship there, it's quality, not quantity. And a lot of people will come back and say, well, do I have to do all these steps? I most of the time tell them, you're a grown person, right? You don't have to do anything. But I can just tell you that this recipe works. I'm not going to tell you, Robert, that you have to drive a car with the transmission, but I can guarantee you it'll work better, that you have to bake a cake and put baking soda or baking powder in it, whatever it is. I don't bake, but I can tell you what, if you skip that step, you're not going to like the results.
Right. So we're talking about all this stuff, and yet you've got a company that helps with this process for people. Interview Valet. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and it's going back to like that cookbook analogy. So we started this early on and started to test it. And I thought, oh, this is awesome. This works great. So I wrote a book, right? And taught people how to do it. And, I sell a lot of the books on Amazon. I'll give it away free to everybody here. If you just come to interviewvalet.com/RK3, it'll be there. You can download the book. And then I started an online course, and I never took it out of beta. We sold really well, but people told me they weren't getting the results because they weren't doing all the steps. It was almost like I was the chef, and I put, here's your cookbook. Here's the videos of how to do it. And people just said, I want to be the guest. You take care of all the rest. And so at the end of 2015, based on customers' feedback, we started a beta test, a done-for-you service. We launched it in early 2016, and it became Interview Valet. Now, 3 years later, we have 85 clients that we work with. We've got a team of 14. We work with a lot of coaches, authors, speakers, brands to get their message out there. And, my mom read my book. Then she came back and she's like, honey, I don't understand podcasts or what you do. And I'm like, Mom, it comes down to our mission. Our mission is to personally introduce inspiring thought leaders to millions of ideal customers that they could serve for the betterment of all. And she's, so you basically just introduce people? I'm like, yep. And she's like, I still don't understand it, but I'm proud of you.
Whoa, our moms making sure that they're proud. That's huge. It doesn't matter what you do, man. As long as mom's proud, you're good. I've succeeded.
Well, and that's, I always say the richness of your life is the richness of your relationships. And, to go out on podcasting there and be able to connect with hosts like yourself, to be able to connect with their audiences. And not only will it enrich your business, but it will enrich your life knowing all these other people too.
You don't need to go the hard way. I know it feels great to push through the blocks, but sometimes there really is an easier way. And Tom is telling you that podcasting is one of those paths. So check out the episode again if you need to. Dive deep into the show notes and then let me know if you have questions. But make sure that you check out Tom at interviewvalet.com. Have you subscribed to the show? Make sure you do. And don't forget to leave a review. We need you, folks. I need you. So don't forget to tell your people to go over to Apple Podcasts, leave a ranking, rating, and review for the show. That's how we get pushed higher in the system so that more people, more ears, more eyes can see the show. Also, listen on Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Pandora, and iHeart. Feel free to show us some love there too. Make sure that you share this with all of your friends. Today was a blast, y'all. I'm looking forward to the next one. Hey, y'all, don't forget, everything that happens to you in life is your stuff is your story, and your story deserves a stage. I'm Robert Kennedy III, Arcade 3, and you've been listening to...